Good morning, everybody. My name is Fabian Levy, and I serve as Deputy Mayor for Communications for the City of New York. In August, I had the opportunity to visit Israel with Mayor Adams and witness once again extraordinary bond between their country and ours. That bond has never been stronger, and the attacks we witnessed this weekend were unprovoked, atrocious, and appalling. They were the sick actions of terrorists. Not militants, but terrorists. I ask for my friends in the media to please quote me accurately. This administration stands with our brothers and sisters in Israel today and every day. We pray for all those innocent people who lost their lives. We pray for all those innocent people who have been kidnapped. We pray for all those innocent people on both sides who are caught in the middle of a war they did not welcome. And we pray for our Jewish community here in New York City hurting at this time. So before we start this morning's event, I ask that everyone join me in a moment of silence for the innocent lives we have lost. Thank you. And thank you for joining us this morning. Like I said last week, delivering clear, accurate, and accessible information is not only a basic responsibility of city government, but a top priority for our administration. That's why the mayor has once again convened leadership from across New York City to answer your questions and address important issues. As I said last week, these new media availabilities do not replace our press conferences. They build on them, giving all of you regular and reliable opportunity to ask off-topic questions. By bringing so many voices together in one room, we are hopeful we provide deeper insights and clearer information on the work we're doing. We're excited to continue exploring this new forum and be joined today by so many of those experts and leaders, including Mayor Eric Adams, First Deputy Mayor Sheena Wright, Chief Advisors to the Mayor Ingrid Lewis-Martin, Deputy Mayor for Operations Mayor Joshi, Deputy Mayor for Housing, Economic Development and Workforce Maria Torres-Springer, Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services Ann Williams-Isom, Deputy Mayor for Public Safety Phil Banks, Deputy Mayor for Strategic Initiatives Anna Almanzar, Chief Counsel Lisa Zornberg, Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs Commissioner Manuel Castro, and NYPD Chief of Patrol John Schell. So without further delay, I'm pleased to turn it over to Mayor Adams.
Thanks so much, Fabian. I think this morning, and the team, we did our 8 a.m. Briefing, and probably the most impactful part was when Lisa, our chief counsel, spoke to us as a team. And she just simply stated that to the people of this city who are Jewish, she said, we're not all right. And I know this is a big city, and we have so many issues we juggle at one time, and we tend to just move through the city and just, on to the next one. But our Jewish brothers and sisters are hurting. They're hurting deeply. And many of them are part of my cabinet. And, I say to them, we're sorry. We're sorry for your pain. When we look over the tapes and videos of what happened to innocent people, and those of us who have children, we do everything possible to protect our children. And I can only imagine having Jordan snatched and someone would drag him through the streets, or someone would rape a niece or nephew, or watching the stoic look on the face of the grandmother as she was being drove away. And we feel for our Jewish brothers and sisters, and we know you're not all right. During the highest and one of the most significant holidays of the year, someone would premeditate and carry out such a barbaric act that we've witnessed. And these are not soldiers, they're terrorists. They're terrorists. And they wanted to not only inflict as much physical pain, they wanted to inflict emotional pain and trauma. And that was intentional. And I just think anyone who celebrates this, who align themselves with this, need to do some real soul searching. Because no matter what our opinions are, there are lines that you just don't cross. You just don't cross. And, I think about my journey to Africa. at the door of no return and sent into dungeons where black mothers were there for months, raped and treated in an inhumane fashion. I think about those who have gone through terrible times across the globe. You think that we are beyond that. You think that's behind us. And Hamas told us that as long as they are in existence, it's not behind us. And that was, those who believe that the Jewish community can put this behind them, they need to look at those videos. They need to watch what happened to innocent people. Innocent people. They were not soldiers. They were just young people, adults, family members. Innocent people were treated in this magnitude. And New York City has the largest Jewish population outside of Israel. And this is a city where tolerance and acceptance and coexistence is important. And I want to thank my Muslim brothers and sisters who reached out and added their voices, who called and talked about how horrific this is, our Sikh community, our Christian community, all of our interfaith communities. And tomorrow we're having an event at Gracie Mansion, and this is going to be at the top of our list as we start the process of assisting those brothers and sisters who have Jewish faith here in the healing process they have to go through. But we are deeply, deeply sorry as an administration, not only to my staffers and my team. Fabian's sister was there. Kayla was with me in South America as she navigated the press there and worried about her loved ones and family members who were in Israel. So many of my friends are still holding their breaths because they don't know the final outcome of their loved ones. And I just want to be extremely clear that this administration is deeply sorry for what happened. My Latin America trip was so significant, and I want to be as clear and as accurate as possible of what the trip was about. I was very clear. I said it several times. There was a threefold goal. Number one, I had to be on the ground. You can't just read about this stuff. And those of you who have followed me for a long time, you know that I like to be on the front line. If it's going to a crime scene, if it's going to a terrible fire, if it's going through a large demonstration, generals lead from the front. You don't send your troops into battle and ask how was the war. I lead from the front. And what I learned on this trip of taking those 4 days, going to Ecuador, Mexico, and Colombia was extremely valuable, and you cannot learn this from just reading about it. And the goal was to do just that. It was to have a firsthand observation. I was able to go to the Darian Gap, number one, flying over, and number two, going on the ground. And unlike what was reported, the police did not have to scramble to protect us. The National Police there is a professional operation, and the general who's in charge, he stated that it's dangerous, Eric. We would rather you not go, but if you decide to go, we need you to adhere to our policies, and that's exactly what we did. And they were able to get our team in safely and get out. They had us in armored vehicles to make sure that we received the necessary protection. And I was able to see firsthand what is happening at the Darian Gap. 375,000 people went through this year, over 100,000 more than 2021, over 2,000 more than 2022. The escalation is unbelievable. And when you speak to the asylum seekers and migrants who are there, they are leaving countries that they are so fearful of that they believe the only destination they can have, number one, is to get out of their country, and number two, to make their way to America, and they identified as New York City. We were able to see the propaganda that's being used by the individuals, the smugglers. They are using real propaganda in social networks such as TikTok, Facebook, and others to specifically advertise for New York City, to tell people to come to New York City. And so the second goal we had was to use the local press in those various countries to communicate with them and give them a real view of what life is like in New York City, and not what the social media and the smugglers were doing. And we gave them an honest view, a real view. We spoke with the leaders about it, and we were able to get the necessary communication through the local on-the-ground media there to tell them this is what life is like. Now, are we going to be able to dissuade them? Some people are fleeing horrific conditions. They're willing to put their lives on the line to travel through the Darian Gap, which is extremely dangerous. Many people don't make it through. 21% of them are children. And even when you make it through, the PTSD, the trauma, what you have gone through is going to impact you the rest of your lives. Everything from sexual abuse to rape to violence. Just the conditions are so horrific there. It's beyond one's explanation. And we wanted to communicate, if you put yourself in that danger, here's what's at the end. We are out of room in New York City. We've been extremely clear on that. And lastly, to develop relationships with the local government there. They were extremely receptive. They gave us some great ideas. I have a meeting with former President Clinton that I am planning because he played a significant role in the Columbia plan years ago when we were dealing with narcotics. I'm going to ask his feedback on some of the ideas that were presented to me. I met who's now the general. He was the colonel during that time, and we're going to build on that. So it was fact-finding, it was to give a real picture, and it was make the appropriate connection with the leaderships there, and we were able to do just that. The trip, based on our standards, was exactly what we wanted to accomplish, and we're going to continue to push through. And those who state that, why am I dealing with international policies, I don't know if they know about the list of mayors across the country that's dealing with environmental issues. New York City is an international city. The respect we receive is remarkable. People look towards New York City. And I'm going to do everything I can to address this issue that this city is facing locally in New York City, statewide, nationally, and international. And I'm going to combine with mayors across the globe that are dealing with this international movement of human beings that has swept our entire globe. And so I look forward to the follow-up. Our team is going to do just that. And we're going to handle the situation here, but we're going to also look on our partners across the globe. So why don't we open to some questions?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to talk to you about the situation in Israel and its effect in New York City. I know that there was a lot of concern about the demonstration in Times Square with the Democratic Socialists, but there's been competing parades and rallies for both sides. My question to you is, do you think that you as a mayor should ask social media platforms to crack down on hate speech and other things that are now floating around in the social media world that are provoking a lot of strong feelings on both sides of this issue and adding to tension that a lot of people in New York are feeling? And as a corollary to that, I'm wondering if your intel is showing any concerns for potential attacks on synagogues and other Jewish houses of worship.
So I want to answer that in both layers. Number one, Marsha, you know my feelings about social media. You know, they continue to give this posture of we're just producing a product without any social responsibility. And I believe they should sit down, evaluate themselves. They can use the algorithms to determine when someone is doing something or motivating hate. These guys are experts at getting the algorithms and the responses that they are looking for. And to really promote some of the hate that we're seeing I think is only harmful because there's a lot of emotions here. And I believe it's extremely harmful. And if they don't want to do their job of policing themselves, I really believe it's time for the federal government to step in and come up with some real guidelines on how we can put some of this hate in the universe, because it only throws gasoline on the fire that's already burning. And they could do a better job, and they're not. They're not. They're hidden, and I think it's a real problem. Chief Shell can go over what we're doing here in South America. We had Commissioner Weiner, who's in charge of Intel. She was monitoring the situation. She was communicating with her team back here, and Chief Shell and his team, I believe, did a remarkable job when you think about the amount of protests that took place, and there's more to come. Chief, can you give an overview?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So we had many rallies since Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You saw us out there. Sometimes you didn't see us out there. You saw our uniforms out there. We kept it as peaceful as we could. We'll continue our posture. We had minimal incidents to report, and we're tracking all social media. Our intel's tracking any threats. There are no threats, and we'll be out there today. Tomorrow, we'll keep this going, the same posture we're taking, and so far it's been working for us. So the city and the police department responded well to this.
Do you think that the stuff that's been going on social media is making it more difficult for you to police the situation, more difficult, and adding to tensions in New York, where there's so much concern among the Jewish community for the people that they know and love in Israel who are under fire, and some who are still missing?
Yeah, I think it aggravates the problem, and don't underestimate lone wolves. People who are being radicalized online, and when you put out statements that I have read on some of these sites, you can motivate terrible behaviors. But as the chief stated, we are really monitoring sites, and we are using a very sophisticated intel team that we are extremely conscious of, that there are those that could exploit the situation. And so there are things that are seen, like our various teams that are out there, but there's a lot of unseen activity that Commissioner Weiner is doing to make sure that we stay on top of this. And all of the commanders that have the locations where we have a high Jewish population, particularly in our Hasidic community, because they are a visible sign of the Jewish community. And so we know we need a special attention there. Williamsburg, Borough Park, Rockaway, Flatbush area. We are very conscious of this, and the police department is excellent at doing this.
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, and for Chief Shell, so how are you ramping up security? What should New Yorkers be looking for, and especially in light of a lone wolf attack or a terror cell or group?
So, Julia, let me just walk you through. Saturday morning, the team was on the phone early morning, coordinating our response, moving an incredible amount of resources to protect our Jewish community, all churches and religious institutions in the city. We had multiple community calls with faith leaders from the Jewish religion, the Muslim religion, very well received, getting everyone on the same page as to what we're doing. And then yesterday, the mayor convened a call with all elected officials. So the city was all what we were doing on the same page, and everyone's got the information we're sharing. We are, like I said, we're going to continue that posture with multiple layers of security for different types of religious institutions, whether it be the cops standing in front of the church, whether it be safe corridors, terror lights on, late shift perimeter searches of some of the key institutions. So we're very good at this. We've done it a lot. We'll continue to do it, and we'll monitor social media, intel, and we'll adjust accordingly.
And then in the end of our meetings with our synagogues, we're going to clearly, number one, they should designate a security team or personnel within the synagogues to do perimeter search and views, observations. If someone is hanging around a synagogue, or you see someone within the community that is suspicious, see something, say something, do something. This is an important time. If you have a law enforcement person who's assigned to your synagogue or attend your synagogue, they should be positioned enough to observe what's going on inside. This is really an opportunity. We have to be high alert. We cannot let our guards down. We cannot believe that it happened thousands of miles away in Israel. We're the largest Jewish population outside of Israel. And we want our synagogues, our personnel to be extremely conscious, and that's what we're telling our commanders, where we have a large Jewish population or those large targets like 770 on Eastern Parkway. That's a significant area where the Lubavitch community is well known, and we want to educate not only what police are doing, but we want to empower our synagogues to also be part of the eyes and ears.
I just want to follow up.
Yes.
Because you mentioned Lone Wolf. There was that instance where there was that bomb-laden car in Times Square. This could be an opportunity for somebody not related to anything in Israel just to act out.
Yes.
So what should New Yorkers be aware of? What should they be looking for? And when do they call, see something, say something?
Well, this is definitely a moment where you don't want to live your eyes living in your phones. You need to be conscious of your surroundings. This is a very heightened period right now. You should be conscious of your surroundings. And really, when we look at the New Year's Eve, I don't think people realize how well the police department responded to that threat. They terminated the threat, and they went on to protect the thousands of people who were celebrating New Year's, because you have cases where people will let off a bomb or something and then have a secondary device. And what the police department did, they made sure that they did not just focus their attention on that threat, which was a horrific threat because officers were injured. They immediately went back to protecting the entire city. And that's the same case here. And so, lone wolves are real. And they can get radicalized online, and they would carry it out in action, particularly when a call is placed out there to do something harmful. And so we must remain vigilant, but we need New Yorkers to be vigilant with us. It's a partnership to ensure the safety.
Hey, Mayor Adams, I wanted to ask you if you've had a chance to review the delay. It's about the Kawasaki Trewick case. If you've had a chance to review the delay caused by the NYPD not turning over body-worn camera footage for 20 months, and that's the reason why CCRB surpassed the statute of limitations for filing charges. What you take, because it seems like it was the NYPD delay, and then secondly, do you plan to meet with the Trewick family? I know they've requested to meet with you. So just first the question is about the delay that was caused by the NYPD not turning over footage, which eliminated CCRB from filing anything, and then will you meet with the Trewick?
Yeah, Commissioner Caban was, after the last time you asked me, Commissioner Caban, who was out of town, I was out of town, he said he's going to look into it and find out was the delay on our part, exactly what happened in the delay, because we don't want to interfere with the wheels of justice. It can happen on our end, so he's looking into that. And once this is completed, I don't have a problem meeting and sitting down with the family, but I would like for it to complete because it's up to the commission to make the final determination. But meeting with families of violence of any level or any crisis is something that I do because, that's the role I must have.
Mr. Mayor, your trip
Yes.
to...
I didn't even know you were there.
Mr. Mayor, your trip to Central and South America, you spoke a little bit about this at the top, about how tough it is to discourage folks who've already been through so much from continuing to make their trip on to the north. My colleague Craig interviewed a bunch of those folks who were in Ecuador, who were looking for jobs, who weren't able to find jobs in Ecuador, and obviously America has jobs. And they were thinking about still making the trip through the Gap. They weren't aware that you were in the city and that you were asking them not to come. And even if they had been, they wouldn't have been deterred. So how reasonable is it to expect that this trip has any lasting impact on what's actually happening here in New York on the ground, day in and day out?
And I think that's a legitimate question that you're asking. Number one, we cannot sit back and do nothing. We can't sit back and just say, okay, if you tell us the reality of what's happening in New York, we're going to look at what was happening in our own country, but anything is better than where we are. What we did learn in Ecuador is that there were a number of people who left, and they're trying to now come back to Ecuador. They reached out to their government and said that they want to come back because the reality of what life is like, living in a congregate shelter, unable to work. And so there are those who are attempting to come back to their countries. And so my goal was to make sure that I was transparent. It was never my desire to say, if people wanted to pursue away from their countries, I wanted to be transparent and clear of what you're coming through. And I wanted to use those local mediums to do so. And we did that. But there were those we spoke with when we were there who are asylums and migrants who stated that we got it. We know it's dangerous. We know the Darian Gap was a dangerous trek, those who went through. But the product of the American dream is just so rich to those countries. And then when you're fleeing, Ecuador is fleeing real drug violence. Venezuela is fleeing, real destabilization. And they believe, based on what was being promoted, that America was the only place that they can come, and New York City was the final destination. So my role was to be as transparent as possible, and that was my attempt. Was it successful 100%? I don't know that. We're not going to know. Is someone going to hear the voice of the mayor of the city saying, you're not coming to a 5-star hotel? I'm hoping they did. But I have to try everything to help this city deal with this crisis that we are facing. And I'm going to try everything to do so.
Mayor, if I may, hold on one second. Mayor, it was part of the trip was fact-finding as well. Maybe you or Commissioner Castro want to talk about that for a second?
Yes, and that's very important. 'Cause I think people lose on those parts of it. They lose the fact-finding part of it. We learned a lot by being on the ground, and that was probably the most significant part of it. That's part of the conversation I'm going to have with former President Bill Clinton. But the information we were able to receive on some of the social media platforms that are being used, learning what Colombia willingness. Colombia, they have absorbed 2.5 million migrants and asylum seekers, and they're saying we can sort of stop the flow a lot if we have some assistance with the infrastructure. They've been left alone to basically handle it on their own. Panama is passing people through. They're unwilling to absorb any. Costa Rica is unwilling to absorb. If we can help Colombia, we can really slow this pace down. And that is some of the things that we learn in the partnership we want to have with Colombia. We want to present to our federal lawmakers. I have a call scheduled with Congressman Meeks as the ranking Democrat on foreign affairs. So stuff we learned on the ground in our fact-finding was crucial that I didn't know, wasn't aware of, and we want to continue to grow on. Commissioner Castro, is there anything you want to add?
Thank you, Mayor.
It's on.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. It is clear from what we saw and what we learned that cities have a very critical role in this issue. We are experiencing a new era of mass migration. And so it makes sense for us as cities to be working together. Bogota, Quito, Mexico City, El Paso, Chicago, New York City. We have to be working together to address this. And this is all being led by 7 million Venezuelans leaving the country, all within a very short amount of time. Technology innovation, social media is driving this. And then smugglers have become entrepreneurs. We're seeing a jungle that used to be seen as uncrossable, now crossed by hundreds of thousands of people. So New York City, Mayor Adams, we truly are leading the way. Ask any expert who has been looking at this issue for decades. They've been saying time and time again, cities like New York City, global cities need to lead the way, and this is exactly what we're doing. And again, there's a lot of humanity here that we had a chance to see face to face. I was not allowed to speak to people, but I did. I did speak to a family, a mother with 4 children. I saw myself in them. I was a child migrant myself, and they are terrified. at crossing the jungle, but they were. And in part because they didn't find these opportunities elsewhere in South America. We want to make sure we have those conversations so that these children and these families don't have to cross the jungle and possibly not make it.
Yeah, go ahead, Nolan. Go ahead, Nolan. Yes.
Some basic facts about the trip. Can you say how many folks went along with you from the city administration and how much was spent?
What was interesting here, all of this could have been placed on taxpayers' dimes. Our entire team picked up their own course, except for Kayla, who was dealing with media. Kayla had to come down to deal with, part of the role of the media. But Tim Pearson paid his own way. I paid my own way. Ed Mermenstein paid his own way. The team picked up their own course. We know we're going through a financial crisis. And we said, listen, we believe in what we were doing, so we picked up the course of the trip. It would have been nice if you guys would have really highlighted the fact that, this administration was so committed that we could have easily had the city pay for this, but taxpayers did not pay for this. We picked up the cost for it. And the course with our public protection, you communicate with the New York City Police Department. They had an obligation. Ecuador would not let me move around without an armored vehicle. Colombia would not let me move around without an armored vehicle. Our officers were able to partner Chief of Staff and Tim and Deputy Mayor Banks was able to coordinate with the personnel on the ground to make sure that we had our armed security that was there. And so it was appropriate to have the right security. These are some dangerous environments. Let's not kid ourselves. We were not going to Disneyland. We were not, this was not a trip where we were sightseeing. They were very clear with us. These are some extreme, dangerous environments you guys are getting ready to go into. And I wanted to make sure my staff was protected. And I wanted to make sure that I got back here as well. I got a lot of work to finish doing.
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
How are you?
Good. I wanted to ask if you had been in contact with either the White House or even the Israeli government on whether any of the 11 Americans killed might have been from New York, or if any of the hostages might be from New York City. And my second question is about, with respect to the migrants and policy. I noticed that when you were on Face the Nation, you were followed by the Illinois governor, Governor Pritzker, who was also imploring the Biden administration to intervene. And he said, it's going to get cold in New York City and Chicago very soon.
Yes.
And I just wonder whether you and Governor Hochul have talked about perhaps having a dialogue and forming a coalition with Illinois, Chicago, Massachusetts, and there are other Massachusetts municipalities that are receiving migrants, and making this sort of a more full-throated effort from more elected officials, especially since you just came back from your trip to Latin America, and I'm sure you have things to share with them.
Yes, and Deputy Mayor Wright, First Deputy Mayor Wright is doing just that. I don't know if she's at the point now that she wants to go through it, but there is a coordination that is taking place both here in the country, and based on the trip, we're going to expand it across this hemisphere. But that is in place right now, and part of this trip is going to assist in that. But there is a coordination that is taking place right now. But we should also be clear on something, that the mayor of Chicago, I communicated with him the other day, he's going to the border. I don't know if you recall, we went to the border. And people said, why were we going to the border? And now other mayors are saying, wait a minute, we need to see firsthand what's going on. The mayor of Denver, he's making flyers to hand out to people to tell them that his city has no more room. Deputy Mayor Williams-Isom handed out flyers to say, let's communicate with people to push back on that. So many things that people looked at our leadership as saying, why were we doing what we're doing? Everyone is duplicating what we're doing. We led. New York led. And when you lead, those who are not up to your leadership are going to critique it. and don't understand the fullness of it. This team here, we know the fullness of having 375,000 people go through the Darian Gap. 7.3 million people leaving Venezuela, staying in this region. I mean, we need to really wrap our heads around what is happening right now. 7.3 million people leaving Venezuela, staying in this hemisphere. And the overwhelming number of them believe destination America equal destination New York. If we don't get this under control, and if we don't focus on this real, we cannot simply be playing, we got you on a sentence you said incorrectly. Hey, folks, this is a real crisis that we are facing beyond your imagination. This is a crisis a humanitarian crisis that this city has never experienced before. This has normally been in Europe, with Paris and other places in Europe has experienced. This has now shifted to North and South America. And we better get prepared for this.
The other part?
The second question?
Do you want me
Yeah,
to?
what was the second?
It was about the coordination with the.
No, that's what I said. That's what.
Whether there were any New Yorkers who died.
Oh, yeah.
So I've been in touch with the Israeli consulate. Right now, there's over 100 kidnapped. Probably be significantly more. They're still trying to assess that. So they're going to get back to us and let us know specifically if there are any New Yorkers. But I've been in touch with the Israeli consulate all weekend.
And what about among the dead, the Americans, the 11 Americans?
If any of them are New Yorkers, they're still trying to identify. Sadly, a lot of the bodies are not in a place that they can identify yet.
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I want to go back to that response you had about success. When you went to the Daren Gap on Saturday, you mentioned that you were only able to observe. You weren't able to talk to any migrants. I wonder if you weren't able to talk to any of them and get your message out, how is that successful? And then separately, is New York City in any way providing resources or any help coordinating with the federal government when it comes to Israel other than protections at synagogues and things like that?
Yeah. Okay. Daren Gap was 2 forms of mission. And, let's be honest and let's be realistic. You're getting 375,000 went through this year. There was no way we would speak with 5,000 people and have an in-depth conversation of what was happening. How do you do it? You do it by speaking through media, the newspapers, television, the radios, the social media sites. That's how you reach the mass number of people. The goal was to see what does it look like. We spent that half day flying over the Darian Gaps, looking at how people are coming in, what are the boats they are using, and then we got on the ground and we were able to see a visual, the number of people sleeping on the beaches, taking the boats across. And so you're not going to speak with 5,000 people and say, okay, here's the reality of New York. So you use the various mediums that are there to communicate with people. If anyone thought we were going to go down to the Darian Gap and communicate with 10,000 people and engage in in-depth conversations on a 3-country, 4-day trip, that's just not being realistic. We had a real clear plan. We orchestrated, coordinated, and executed exactly what we were looking for. Communicated with the media, meet with our electeds, have fact-finders. That was exactly what we did in the 4 days that we were there. We went to 3 countries in 4 days, meeting with senior leaderships, nonprofits, NGOs, UNs, public law enforcement officials, sun up to sundown, and there was very little rest in between. I feel sorry for my staff. They don't want to travel with me again, I'm sure. But we executed a plan, and it carried out the objectives that we were looking for.
Do you want to answer the other?
What was it?
Having any resources or support, talking to the state or the feds about helping those impacted by the conflict outside of the protection at synagogues?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you, Fabian?
Sure. So we've been in touch with, like I said, the mayor and I went to Israel earlier this summer. We're actually in touch with folks on the ground in Israel, restaurant owners who are helping coordinate meals for soldiers and those that have been displaced. Altice is offering free long-distance calls to Israel for folks here, so we're helping promote that. We're trying to get people to volunteer, to donate, to provide funds for food for those in Israel. So we're talking to the consulate and seeing anything else that they need. We've been in touch with a number of people over the weekend. We've been very clear the city of New York is behind them and want to support in any way possible.
And there's some conversations taking place now with some surplus supplies we have. Our team is speaking out. Commissioner Iscol is speaking with some of the volunteer organizations that are here to see how do we get some of those surplus supplies that we have here that we built up during COVID. So we are engaged on all the different levels to see how do we help, but not get in the way. There needs to be, sometimes during these issues, these incidents, there's a level of enthusiasm to just help, but we need to coordinate with those who are on the ground in Israel to see how do we not get in the way and how do we make sure that we assist them during these times of need.
Mayor, do you want to maybe mention the calls you had yesterday?
Yes, yesterday I communicated with the mayor of Jerusalem, the mayor of Tel Aviv, and the president of Israel, and they were extremely appreciative of not only the relationship with this administration in the country, but how we were, proactive in saying, listen, we want to be here to help, but not to get in the way. Things are extremely chaotic on the ground, and we want to make sure that we are coordinating well with them, and I look forward to reaching out and coordinate a time to speak with the Prime Minister as well.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. So I want to just pivot to school safety questions. On Friday, we had 2 firearms confiscated by Independence Environmental co-located thanks to afternoon scanning. And then in Staten Island, we had the young man stabbed to death. In Brooklyn, we had the young lady shot. So my question, and I'm happy Chief Chow and Deputy Mayor Banks is here. My question to you, Mr. Mayor, is with schools like Environmental that had afternoon scanning after a parent alerted the school about a possible firearm, do you plan on increasing scanning at high schools? Second question, Mr. Mayor, the stabbing in Staten Island was clearly gang-related. At least that's what we're hearing from witnesses. And, the youth, Project Pivot is a great program, but we need more programs like that, youth intervention in the schools, because clearly it's also impacting middle school students. And then my last question, which I'm hoping Deputy Mayor Banks and Chief Chow could answer, the School Safety Division used to have police officers assigned to it. The previous city council under de Blasio cut the NYPD budget, and the dedicated school safety officers with NYPD School Safety Division were transferred out. With the need for safe corridors, would you consider reinstating, and for you too, Mr. Mayor, reinstating those NYPD officers to provide safe corridors so that we can prevent situations like what happened on Saturday in Brooklyn and in Staten Island?
And great question, Mona. Listen, public safety is a prerequisite to prosperity. I cannot say that over and over again. And making sure our children are safe is of paramount importance for us. And I'm glad you raised that, because I'm often criticized because I believe school safety play a role. Remember, when I campaigned, everyone, I won't say everyone, but the fringe element of the city didn't want school safety in our schools at all. And they demonized me for saying I will never get rid of school safety in our schools. And hats off to the police department. They got a report of a child had a gun. They went in, they did a exit scanning. They were able to identify 2 guns. They were able to make apprehensions at the same time. And there's a loud voices that don't even want us to do any type of scanning in schools. Idealism collides with realism often. And you cannot have an idealistic approach to public safety. You have to have a realistic approach to it. And I'm not going to allow the loudest to get in the way of protecting our schools. We have not had one mass shooting or shooting in our school buildings, not one. And that's because of the job that the Police Commissioner Caban and former Commissioner Keyshawn Sue put in place. But Chief Shell can give you an overview of those incidents and the apprehensions we made in those cases.
So just to bring you back to last year, last spring, late winter, we had a couple school shootings that were high profile. We put together a whole new strategy for this. So what did that encompass? Better communication with DOE. Our commanding officers speaking to our school principals once a week. Now our borough commanders are speaking to superintendents once a month. Just the communication alone changed the game for us. Let's talk about strategy and deployment. Each precinct was mandated to increase the YCOs, their youth coordinating officers, to 6, to be at school dismissals, to cover the safe corridors like you mentioned. We had the principals identify corridor locations, hangout locations that are well known to each individual school, whether it be a Chipotle's, a McDonald's, whatever you want to call it. And we focus on the corridor and that location. Transit on the ground mirrors what we're doing for transit hubs. We put all this in place last year, and we ended off the year very, very well. When you talk about the 3 incidents Friday, incident 1 was a shooting of a 6-year-old coming home from school. The 7-0 precinct had their public safety team in that area from intelligence gleaned from our communication, and we would love to prevent that shooting, but that person was quickly apprehended with a firearm, and that was gang-related. In terms of the second incident at the school, you said it. The mayor often asks, we often ask for people to get involved. A parent got involved, sounded the alarm. Again, the communication was quick, it was accurate, it was fast. We were able to put the school in a shelter mode. We were able to do a search, and then we made a decision on the ground to do what's now we're deeming a reverse scanning, and we came up with 2 firearms and a imitation pistol, like the mayor said. Nothing happened that day other than that. No mass shooting. What did we prevent? Who knows, but we prevented it. And then when you get to Staten Island, again, the unfortunate incident on a bus, was it gang-related? It still looks that way. We didn't prevent the young man from getting stabbed, but again, our officers and people getting involved in the community. We had a good Samaritan. We had a retired member of our service get involved from the get-go, and we're able to make that apprehension. So strategy, communication, accuracy, deployment. And it's working for us. We love to prevent it, but the next best thing is to stop it immediately, and that's what we did.
And you did prevent, Chief. We had 2 guns in the school. We don't know what those guns were going to be used for, but because of the reverse scanning, we were able to identify those 2 guns, take those 2 guns off the streets, and he briefly stated it, but let's not underestimate the role of a parent. A parent stepped up and did the right thing, and we need to commend that parent, because in order for us to do this correctly, we're going to need our parents, and a parent like that should be commended. And she probably saved lives of innocent students while we got those 2 guns.
And just to add to what Chief Shell said, just to clarify, and for everybody, if they don't know, the bus incident, just to be clear, was not on a school bus. It was on an MTA bus. So it was off school property. It was not involving anything at a school.
Quick kind of follow-up very quickly. Mr. Mayor, the last time I interviewed you, I asked you about the Bulletproof Vest, and I understand now that our school safety agents will be getting the Bulletproof Vests. Everything is approved and ready to go. Will there be an announcement of it? Because this would be the first time, to my understanding, that school safety agents, like the ones that disarmed, that confiscated the 2 guns, don't have bulletproof vests. So,
well, and thank you for that, and thank you because you raised the question. It's difficult to acknowledge all the great stuff we do for the first time, because we just trip over each other because we've done so many first-time things. So we will roll it out and hope we can get Chris Sommerfeld to write a nice story about it.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, one more question about the
trip and the fact-finding part.
Yes.
So you'd already talked to dozens of migrants who reached New York and heard their stories. You went to El Paso, you read and watched the news about the Darian Gap.
Mm-hmm.
Can you name 2 or 3 specific things that you learned on this trip that you didn't already know?
First of all, we're going to do a full briefing, but I would pinpoint, and the reason I am going to meet with Bill Clinton, former President Clinton. I did not know the role he played in dealing with the drug crisis that was coming out of Colombia. He made the decision that those drugs were finding their way on the streets of New York City and hurting our young people. So he went to the source and he put in place a real plan. It was called the Colombia Plan. And I was fortunate that in my meeting with the general of the National Police, the general was a colonel at the time that assisted in executing the plan, that assisted, hold on, let me just read what, yes, that assisted in the execution of that plan. And you know who was the Foreign Affairs Senator, Chairman? Joe Biden. And so that whole layout is a blueprint for us to duplicate. You stabilize Colombia, you give Colombia the support that they need, they're absorbing a large number, they want to be partners. That was an eye-opener for me. Second, Mexico. Mexico, they have over 1 million jobs they're trying to fill. And the reason that, they don't have the right infrastructure and assistance that should be coming from a partnership with our country, that instead of people coming all the way up to America and New York City, if we build and assist in infrastructure in Mexico and Colombia with real partnerships, we can stop the flow coming all the way onto New York City. And third, which I think is one of the most important measures, is the depth of the social media campaign. Some of the websites and the partnerships between the smugglers are using innocent people to smuggle drugs up and threatening them with their lives. So there's a law enforcement component to this initiative, and we're looking to assign a NYPD detective down to Colombia, like we have them assigned across the globe for terrorism. We're looking to partner with the National Police, who's willing to do this with us. They said that we're all in, having a detective there that could give us real intel of the flow on the ground. And those 3 things I was not aware of prior to the trip, and there are more that was extremely revealing because I was on the ground. And that's why, as I stated earlier, this was a successful trip, and it was good to be on the ground and learn more.
And you view your role as more expansive now, that you have to be a part of something like a Colombia plan, that you have this sort of like diplomatic international role now.
Well, I think people really underestimate what countries feel about New York City and the role of the mayor of New York City. And when UNGA comes here, my team they must balance global leaders that want to sit down and have a conversation with New York City. Mayors from all over the globe. People debate of who's second and third. No one debates who's number 1. This is the greatest city on the globe, and we lead. People follow what we do. And so, no, I'm not an international leader. I'm just in an international city. And because this is an international city, the things we do impact what happens across the globe. And because I know that this is the greatest shift in human populations in modern times, we have to take it serious. And if we don't, I know what could happen to the city that I love.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Two questions on 2 very different topics, but I want to make sure I'm able to ask both.
Yes.
Since the Hamas terror attack, Israel has cut off power, food, water access to Gaza. I'm just wondering, in your conversations with leaders in Israel and so on and so forth, Do you think that's a justified response from Israel, or might that have an adverse impact on civilians in Gaza? And then separately, on a completely different topic, the 2025 mayoral election. Alan Roscliffe, who I believe you at least at one point used to count as a friend, has launched a coalition to recruit a challenger against you. Some local lawmakers, including Jessica Ramos, has not ruled out running against you. I guess I'm wondering, what do you make of members of your own party this early taking steps to challenge you, and is that a reason why you've fundraised as much as you have for your re-election campaign?
So let me deal with number one. I'm not going to go into the private conversations that I have with leaders of Israel. They have the right to protect themselves and their people, and how they go about carrying out their role is something that their government must determine. As the leaders of this country make that determination, and as the leader of the city, I'm going to make the determination on how to protect the city. Alan, who I know is a good friend of yours, and he gives you a lot of good sources and reporting when you want to do your stories. I know y'all have a great relationship, and whenever he wants to do a story, you make sure he gets the billing that he deserves. So I got that. Listen, Alan didn't endorse me when I ran for mayor. WFP didn't endorse me, and a list of whole other people didn't endorse me. You know who endorsed me? Everyday New Yorkers, working class people. And so I fundraise because part of the role is to raise money. It's okay, you don't want to hear some of my songs. I fundraise because unfortunately this is part of, how do you raise $13 million to put on a campaign? I'm the only candidate that stated, let's no longer have fundraising in campaigns. Let's have a public finance campaign where you're giving $2 million, and that's all you can spend on the campaign. No more raising money, no more calling private donors, no more asking people for donation. You think I like doing these large number of fundraisers, asking people to raise money, doing all the filing, worrying about people going through and calling all my donors and say, did you actually donate to Eric? You think I want to do this? You know how much time it takes away from governing when you have to raise $13 million? What do I get $13 million from?
So you're saying that these challengers are formidable, the potential challengers are formidable of a threat enough, and that's why you need to fundraise?
No. Every challenger is formidable. You don't discount anyone when you're running a campaign. Anyone who does that is foolish to do so. I do the fullness of my job. The fullness of my job is to govern. The fullness of my job is to protect the city, to move the city forward, and to raise the money to be able to campaign in the future. It's part of the job. And so if people want to decide that we want to put committees together to run against Eric Adams, I don't have any decision on that. The people of the city will determine who's going to be the mayor of the city, like they did the last time. These are the same people who didn't endorse me the last time. I don't know if you realize it. He didn't endorse me the last time, and I've known him for years. So what do you do? You stay up at night and worried about people who are meeting in the basement somewhere of saying, how do we stop Eric Adams from being mayor? Can't do that. I got a city to govern, and I enjoy every second of fighting on behalf of New Yorkers. I enjoy every part of improving this city, making our city safer, getting people back on the subway system, getting jobs back in the cities, getting tourists back in the city, navigating us through COVID, navigating us through the asylum seeker crisis. When you think about it, I know you don't like to admit it, but I know you get on your knees and pray every night, thank God Eric is the mayor of our city. You know that? You're able to ride your little bike safely through our city. No one is coming at you. You're able to hang out in the restaurant. You're able to enjoy your little restaurants. You're able to, I made your career. You get so many first page stories from me. You are so excited about covering me. You are so excited covering me. You don't know what to do. You know. Okay.
Thank you.